Hello, and welcome to the Old Soul Archaeology Podcast. My name is Michelle Janae. Thank you for tuning in and listening. Are you ready to dig deep? Hello, and welcome back to Old Soul Sojourn. Today, as a first, I have two guests, and they are Deirdre Harter and Carmen Reed-Gilkison of Encore Empire. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you so much for having us, Michelle. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, we are super excited.
Awesome. I'm excited to have you both. But I just want to do a brief introduction and really dive into your story really quickly about how you two met and a little bit of background and what Encore Empire is all about. Deirdre Harter is a CPA, and Carmen Reed-Gilkison is a certified whole person coach, and they are co-founders of Encore Empire. They help women over 40 cash in on their life experience by empowering them to start and grow their own businesses. Their values-driven method is a breath of fresh air in the entrepreneurial space. Awesome. So let's just get started with how the two of you met. Partnerships are one of those things that can be very elusive, but also very powerful. So I understand it was kind of a little bit of kismet.
Definitely. Yeah. I'll start and I'll let Deirdre follow up. But so I attended a virtual online event, right? It was 2020. COVID happened. It was supposed to be an in-person event and they were holding it virtually. And I thought, why not? You know, it was a low cost ticket. And I figured that might be fun. It was all about business growth and all that kind of stuff. So I really didn't have any expectations going in. But the way that they ran it was really awesome, where you were assigned different quote unquote tables. So it was the same as if you were going to go into a hotel, you know, and you're sitting at a table and you get to know your table mates. Well, Deirdre was one of my table mates. And really we just started talking throughout the event, and going past there, she connected again, and, you know, it just kind of snowballed. And pretty soon we realized that we had a lot in common, and a partnership was born. We didn't start out that way, but it was pretty cool. So I'll let Deirdre fill in her side of that as well.
Yep. Yeah. And same story as far as, you know, going to the virtual event. As soon as COVID hit last year, I was primarily working in my e-commerce business. And I was looking to kind of put that on the back burner and get my coaching and accounting services going. Well, with COVID and, you know, everybody scrambling for toilet paper and toothpaste, I had to like kind of kick it into high gear there for, you know, a couple of months. And, you know, everything was going crazy. So by the time this event came around in August, it was like we had gone, you know, uphill, and then it was crashing downhill because, you know, all of the carriers were not able to fulfill, and it was just and my vendors couldn't supply the products. So my e-commerce business basically, you know, it was tanking. I mean, it spiked really big and then it was tanking. And my local sources where I normally went to go get products, you know, that had to be cut off because my husband is high risk. And so I could not go out anymore, you know, and do my normal thing. So I had to really, even though I was a home-based business, I had to really, you know, rein it in and stay home. So I decided, okay, now's the time for me to build out this coaching accounting service. And I really wasn't clear on which direction I wanted to go. I've done both in the past. So I was kind of at that crossroads of like, okay, I need to pick a lane. You know, I can't, you know, be doing 2 or 3 different things. So I met Carmen, and I've understand the power of networking and relationship building. And I've done it throughout my entire accounting career. And so doing it virtually was kind of the new way to do things. And so I just reached out because I did resonate with Carmen. I, you know, loved what she was saying in the event. And so we just hopped on a call to just see, you know, how we might, you know, work together, get to know each other. And we could finish each other's sentences. Like it was that kind of a relationship. So it was like the stars aligned, and everything we both needed at exactly the right time. And we decided to, to just go for it. We were both ready to do this.
Mhm.
I love that aspect of timing, right? Because we're always trying to push the river. And so, of course, in the back of my mind, I'm going, well, what's your secret? What's your secret? And yet so much of the secret is just being in the right place at the right time and allowing. So
Right,
tell me a
exactly.
little bit about how Encore Empire became a thing. What was that conversation like? Obviously, you've let in a little bit, Deirdre, on this networking and finishing each other's sentences, but what was the seed, or what made you guys say, let's work together and let's form a women's group among all of the many women's groups and networking that's out there?
Well, so as a whole person certified coach, my focus was midlife women, and helping them find purpose. But what my purpose was, when I went through, I kind of hit a midlife wall at one point, was like, is this all there is? And what is next for me in my life? My nest was empty. I had nothing to complain about, but at the same time, I wasn't fulfilled. And so it was kind of like having to try to find your purpose again, right? And that happens to very, very many women. So I was working in that realm. But for me, the thing that I always believed wholeheartedly was that the way to find your purpose and the way to really live productively and impactfully is to turn that purpose into a business. And being able to work online gives you freedom, it gives you income source, it gives you impact ability. You're able to impact so many more people than if we didn't have this fabulous thing called technology. And so I always wanted to help people discover a purpose that would turn into their business, because to me, that's just like, that's the path in my mind. I see it. It's like, runway lights with the lights down the middle, and it's like, go this way. And so I think Deirdre felt the same way. And I never felt like I could do that on my own. It was too big of an undertaking. I was working on it, but it was like a three-legged chair or something. I had almost all the pieces, but I could never get it right. And I didn't have the confidence to do it on my own. I knew it would be a huge undertaking and it would be too much for myself alone. And I think Deirdre has kind of the same experience. And so as we were talking, we realized that we had this in common, and that's kind of where the spark started and things really started to take off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like I said, I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. I've been at this for almost 12 years now. But it started as a side hustle. I was working full-time in a public accounting firm and helping other businesses with their financials, but also I got into virtual CEO role, which I really love that, because I am able to see strategy and to really, see the long term. But I always got stuck on the implementation. Like, I knew I had the right thing. It's just, I was one person and I couldn't seem to get all of it put together and to run it in the way that I knew it needed to be. And I knew about building out teams and having help. And I did have some help in my other businesses, but it just wasn't, I still felt like I couldn't do it all. Like, I had to, watch what they're doing and do my thing. And sometimes I felt like I would second guess myself. Like, I was very confident with my clients. I could see it. I knew exactly what they needed to do. I'm like, okay, here's the strategy. Here's the plan. Here's exactly what you need to do. And they'd go do it and it would all work out. But then when I did it for myself, and this is one of the things that I loved about Carmen is, and I kind of learned this from her, is that you have to do some inner work first. Mm-hmm. You have to be prepared mentally in order to take things to the next level. And with Carmen, we were so well in sync and we had exactly the same vision, and we work, we are very complementary. A lot of the things we do are exactly the same, and we're equals. But at the same time, Carmen brings strengths that I don't have, and I do the same for her. So it really felt holistic. And that was where the conversation started. It's let's bring this holistic piece, this piece where we recognize a woman as a whole person. And that's where our tagline came from. Experience elevates everything. That was brought out like right in the beginning. That was our aha moment. It's like, you're right, it does. And when you can combine two people's experience and put them together, it's really exponential. So we said, you know what, we want to bring this out and we want to give this dynamic to other women, because it is hard on your own. It's really hard. It's mentally difficult. It's time difficult. So our program that we started, we work with women as their partner, as their advisor, right next to them, to help them, to give them that piece. Because like you said, Michelle, finding partners that work out, it's very elusive and it's very difficult to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I get this idea that you guys aren't just two halves of an orange, or half an orange and half an apple trying to make things work. But I really do see the yin and the yang, where it's not that you're looking for all of the things you're missing, but you're also looking for to see yourself in someone else and have that mirrored back to you, so that you can lend confidence to each other, or in a sense, witness. To witness is to acknowledge, right? So you do that for each other. And that's hard on women, I think, because we feel like we're going it alone. I know I do. I know I have. And yet there's also this part of me that is like, oh, I just want to hold it all here. How do I share this? There's so much fear. There's also risk. And sometimes even danger when you put yourself out there in any situation, to partner, to share ideas. How do you guys manage those very real feelings in yourselves as you have embarked on this? And then how do you translate that into the work that you do with your clients?
I would say that they're definitely, we knew each other. We met in August, and we created a legal joint venture in November. So it wasn't a very long period of time. And we were, working together was ramping up between then. So, it started where we would meet like once a month on Zoom, and then it'd be every 2 weeks. And it was like, we should probably meet every week. Then pretty soon it was multiple times a week. And, I think both of us did have the concern in the beginning, because you don't want to be riding someone's coattails and you don't want someone riding yours. And that's a hard thing to manage. Excuse me. And I had looked for a partner at one time years ago, because of everything you said, Michelle. You do get that, validation, you get that boost of confidence, and really it allows you to do things in an exponential way when you've got more than one person. But the first time that this happened, I was looking for a partner, right? And so when you said in the beginning, like, you wonder what our secret is, the secret is that there was no preconceived anything that we knew of, right? It was a divine, that's why we say it's a divine intervention. It just happened. And I don't know, I wish there was a way that we could say, this is the formula and this is how you do it, but it just isn't. The only thing I could say, and I think Deirdre would agree, is to put yourself out there, to network, and to have these conversations, because you never know where a conversation is going to lead. And so we teach our students and our clients the same thing, that you don't want to try to predict what's going to happen. You can't predict what's going to happen. So the only thing you can do is put yourself out there in strategic and impactful, intentional action. And so that's what we teach, and we get great results that way. And I mean, I don't have anything, and there's no secret sauce, is what I'm trying to say.
And for me, when you're talking about, those feelings, it was real for me, because I had partnered with people in the past on projects, joint venturing, and I was fairly comfortable with that, because that's a joint venture is just a project. It's a shorter term type of collaboration, but there's no, it's that's living together. It's not getting married, is what it's like. So to then go into an actual, partnership, like in the very, very beginning, a long time back, I said, I'm not doing that. Like that, that's just not going to happen because, so many things can go wrong. And and it was discussions I'd had with so many clients, where they'd come in and I almost felt like a psychologist / divorce attorney, sitting in my CPA office because the partnership was breaking, the band was not getting back together. And it was painful to watch and to see what they were going through. But at the same time, like Carmen said, I knew in order to be successful in entrepreneurship, and this is where that experience comes in, and I don't think I could have done this at the age of 30 like I can at the age of 50, is to, you have the wisdom and you have discernment, and you have to rely on that. That is part of entrepreneurship. And I think that's the part that gets lost in translation, especially as women, when we are working within the masculine structure of how business works. That piece is not there and it's not talked about. Men tend to do things more transactionally, and as women, we have an intuition inside of us, and we think that's for mothering and that's for relationships, but that's not for business. But it's powerful. And if you bring that in to how you do business, that's where all these other things can open up for you, because yes, you're using logic and you're making sound decisions, but at the same time, you do have to allow yourself to be open to the opportunities that come your way, and to take the time to really absorb them, and not to be wise, but not fearful. Because if you allow fear to get in the way and you start thinking of what could happen, what if, when you start what ifing everything, it will stop you in your tracks and you will miss out on some great opportunities that come your way. So you just have to have that courage that's tempered with wisdom.
Great. Well, that leads me to my next question. But first, I want to say how wonderful it is that you are both modeling something that is, it's another elusive element of our society, especially for women in business. And I always get this twinge of pain. I'm very empathic with trying to feel what other people feel with words. And a lot of it is I realize is my own projection of feeling for the man when we start talking about the masculine, or, we're not being anti-male, we're not even anti-patriarch, but what we are looking for is that balance. And so moving into ourselves as women, and not just women in the home or women with the children or the school, but women in business, let's talk about that inner wisdom, that sense of self. I think inner wisdom, when we're talking about it for the man or the woman, forget masculine and feminine, except that it's there too. But the inner wisdom really is the feminine. It's that going inside, it's the introspection, whereas the masculine energy is more of the outward movement and communication. How have you guys worked with your own inner wisdom? And how does that show up in your clients? Sometimes it's not so, it's sometimes hard to put into words. See, I'm even having a hard time putting it into words, is how do we honor what those hidden things are in what it means to be a female, and especially a female entrepreneur?
One of the things that I learned early on in my journey was that it's very common to start looking outward. Society teaches us to look outward. We're taught to compare ourselves. We're taught to be like this person over here, this model, this, do this, have the house, have the car, have the whatever. All of that is, placed in front of us as what you're to achieve in your lifetime. And so then when people become lost, like in midlife, and they want to find out what their next step is, it's only natural that they look around and they look at someone else and they say, well, gosh, I want to be happy like she is, or I want to do what that person's doing, and look at they're so successful. And but that you can't do that. And we talk about this in entrepreneurship as well as on a personal level. And that's why this whole holistic thing comes into play. And it's so impactful and powerful. When you're looking at someone else, whether you're looking at someone else's business or you're looking at someone else's life in a way that makes you want to envy them, or that you do envy them, you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg of whatever is going on with that person, that business, that thing that you're looking at, right? You don't know the foundation, the backstory, the things that go on behind closed doors, any of that. So there's no reason to do that. It's not real. And so when you look for answers from other people, you get other people's answers. You don't get your own answer. You have to look inward, and you have the answers. And everyone thinks they don't have I don't know. I'm confused. If I had the answers, I wouldn't be confused. But it's because we're not taught to go inward and to shine a light on all those gifts and to ask questions. And one of the things I learned through going through my coaching training is the power of questions. Questions are just incredibly powerful. And when you can ask the right questions, it really starts, it's like unraveling a ball of yarn, like here's one little thread that comes, but it's tied to everything else. And so we often hear from our clients that they'll be going through our program and they'll be like, I kept going because we give homework and, we want to see what they're doing. And we push them a little bit, and they'll be like, I didn't know why you were asking this question. I didn't know why, but I said, okay, whatever. I'm just going to answer the questions. And then they started to realize that when they did answer the questions, even if they just put down something to get past that one question and get to the next one, that it stuck with them, and their mind kind of turned it over and over as the next days and week went by. And they started realizing that, oh my gosh, I actually need to know the answer to that in order for me to have my foundation so that I can grow. And it's like, exactly.
But you can't say it at the front of it because it doesn't quite make sense, especially with the way we're conditioned.
Exactly. And they wouldn't believe you anyway. So
it's true.
And everyone, when we're looking and it's interesting how, we say in business and in life, and that's where the holistic thing is. Like, we see it, it's a whole, you're a whole person, and business is a part of you, and it's a part of your life. But some of the principles that we talk about, it's foundational to who you are and to being human. And that's where the inner, when we help women figure that part of it out. And, we call ourselves, strategists and coaches, but we really kind of see ourselves as guides, because we have to guide them on the journey. If you don't, you can be, this can all be explained to you, and you can say, yes, I understand that, I got to go inner work and answer questions. But really, it's very difficult to do that for yourself. Just like it's very difficult when you are in your business to see things that an objective third party can see. That's where the value of having a guide, having a coach, and whether it's your business, whether it's your health, when you need a transformation or you need to take something to the next level, you need that person, that expert, that third party objective person to come in and look at what you're doing and to see what you can't see, because we all have blinders on to what we're doing. And by having, we sometimes get stuck. We're trying to get down to our inner wisdom, and it's really hard and really difficult. But someone else can come along and they can see it in a different way and give you a new perspective or give you a new way to think about it. And I think that's the big thing. It's about perspective. Your reality is your perspective, and vice versa. So it's really about being able to change your perspective and to look at things in a way that you didn't think to look at before. And that's where you can draw on your own inner wisdom, because it's all inside of us. I like to tell people, there's nothing new in the world. Like there's no, we're not creating anything, from the cosmos here. It's all there. It's just a matter of um, being focused on it and the perspective that you have about it, and being communicated to in a way that lets you see an angle. It's really, the thing isn't new, but there are always different angles to look at everything. And your inner wisdom is what helps you. You have to develop that. You have to develop that ability to be able to kind of, look at it in 3D, like all those pictures where you hover over and it turns it all around. It's the same way. We can look at things in life, and if you turn it around, it's the same thing, but it looks very different.
Yeah, absolutely. As both of you were talking, I'm getting some images in my mind of, perhaps somebody who dreams of climbing Mount Everest, and they can read all the books in the world, and they'll never know what it's like to breathe that rarefied air. And so maybe they buy a ticket and they head to Tibet, and they say, from here, I'm going to go up the mountain, and they're at their very own base camp all by themselves. No guides. I'm going to, the determined individualist. I'm just going to do this. I've read the books. I know. And so they start up the mountain, and without that person that has traveled the road before, they're at a loss, even with inner wisdom. So here we have this paradox, right, of needing both the inner and the outer. And what I love about the idea of a Sherpa is that the Sherpa doesn't necessarily have letters behind their name. Mm-hmm. They don't have degrees or educations, but they've walked the path. And we place so much value on credentials, mm-hmm. and not as much value on experience. And what I love about what you two are doing is that you're not only bringing your own experience, but now you have combined perspective and the allowance for that person to show up and say, well, I read this in a book. Mm-hmm. And when I tried to get up the mountain, it was, I struggled here and there, but you guys have brought this person back down to base camp, set them up with the clothes that fit them. So I imagine also this person on the journey has walked into camp, and they've got a closet full of clothing that may or may not fit them, right? And that's us going out and trying to do business as our inauthentic self, right? So now you've come back and you've said, no. Let's find what fits you. You're not telling them what fits them. You're asking them to feel it in a kind of a bodily manner. Anyways, I'm just tangent, but that's the image I get of you guys, and not necessarily to co-opt the term Sherpa, but I like to think of myself when I guide people to their inner wisdom as an usher. I get to walk them through the door. They get to choose where to sit. They get to choose whether they stay or not. They get to choose how they participate in the environment. So I really love that. And I know that you have both talked about this idea of inside out, mm-hmm. for business. We're not used to hearing those types of terms, inner wisdom, intuition, and certainly not inside out. What is inside out? What is your inside out approach to business? And why should we pay attention when really what I want is the bottom line? I need to do this so that I can have this. I mean, that's the way we think, right? We want finish line. What does inside out mean?
Well, it's so interesting that you bring up the wardrobe and that things don't fit. So inside out is directly related to that. When I first started, remember I said I looked outwardly for all my answers too. So we've been there, we've walked that path. You do what humans do. And there are, so I started as a side hustle as well. And so I only had a limited amount of time. And I was like, well, I want to ramp this up, right? I want to earn money. I want to get what I want to get. I want to help people, and I want to make an impact, and I want to do it now, So I bought into a high ticket program with a lot of the stuff done for you. All you had to do was follow their method, and you had a business, quote unquote. And I'm a go-getter, and I do I do things, I follow through. I don't purchase things and then let them sit and not do anything with them. I do it. So I did the work. I did my best to do the work, and it never worked. It never felt right. It always felt like I was wearing someone else's coat. And I've said that from the beginning. So that was, when you said that, I was like getting chills, because that's exactly it. You're trying to go out. I'm trying to go out and I'm trying to be what these people say. This is what your business should be. So when you do that, and a lot of people head towards MLM, and there's nothing wrong with MLM there's nothing wrong with any kind of business model, but it's got to be something that lights you up from inside. And so when you ignore the beginning part of the journey that let's say you have, sometimes when you're in a forest and you come up and there's a split, but maybe the path meets back later. If you ignore the one side that is, hey, you need to go inside here first to check out what's going on inside to make sure that you're ready for this. And you're like, nope, I'm just ready. I'm going to go this way instead. You're going to get there, but that path is going to be much longer, because you're going to end up coming right back to where you have to go inside anyway. And so our inside out approach means that we push people to understand what's going on inside them. And like Deirdre said, it's in your business and in your life is the same. So what we do with our clients is if we're working with a mother with young kids, we make sure that her energy is managed. Her energy is honored. Her commitments are honored. Like, what's the priority here? The priority isn't the business. The priority is your family. And then the business comes. And then you do this. But it all comes from, what are the questions that they've answered, the questions that they said, I didn't know why you were asking me this. And then later they're like, I get it now. And I can just tell you that it's like ascending different levels of its knowledge, its experience, but it's kind of a transcendent process when you go inside first. It's like you have to slow down to speed up. You have to understand who you are first, and then you can take off and go where you want to go. But if you miss that piece, it's kind of like having a car without the engine. You could have a Porsche, it could look all beautiful, and without an engine, you're not going anywhere.
And you're Fred Flintstone with the feet underneath, trying to make this Porsche go. Yeah, I've been there, done that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the other part of that, the inside out approach, it's really about understanding your values. Mm-hmm. And as an individual, and you have to start there. And it might sound counterintuitive, because you're like, well, my personal is my personal, my business is my business. But again, they're interconnected, and you can do the hard thing. You can push your way. And, I've been there many, many times. I'm a very determined individual, and I'm highly motivated. And so I'm like, I see this business, and I want the result that it gets. And they said, I need to do these things. And even though I hate it, half of it, I'm going to do it because I want to get what they have.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what happens, and there's nothing wrong, we look at people who, are uber successful, and it's smart to, check out what other people are doing and to kind of identify with, I want to have a business like that, and I want to have the result they had. But you have to know what it takes to get there. Mm-hmm. And you have to know, is it something you can sustain for yourself? We talk a lot about sustainable business growth, and most of the time that's talking about money, and the sales and the marketing and, the sustainable growth to make, to get your company where you want it to be and to scale it. But sustainable growth is also inside of you, and you have to recognize that too, because if a big part of what you need to do does not resonate with you, if it doesn't align with your values, if it isn't something that you can jump up, you don't have to be able to jump up out of bed and be all excited about every single task you do every day. Because let's face it, we all have to do things that we don't really enjoy, and they just simply have to be done. I know, I lived it for 25 years. No one really enjoys coming in and getting their taxes done. Not a fun thing. Nobody really likes it except us weird accountant people. But but that's a one-time thing. Like, that doesn't come along. It's not a daily thing that you have to do. So you have to be in alignment, not only in, what your tasks are going to be and who you're going to be helping, but if you don't understand how you work best or how your energy is, when is your energy at its highest? Because if you need to be creative, you need to understand when's your creative time during the day. And so all of that fits together. And if you don't do that work first, when you go out there to start explaining to people what you do and to being very clear and having the people who you can help and serve really resonate and go, wow, that's exactly who I need to help me, you're never going to get your messaging right. Like it will always feel like an imposter. And so you end up with this imposter syndrome because you don't really feel, as Carmen said, if you're wearing someone else's coat or you just grabbed the nearest coat you found and didn't take the time to make sure it's nice and fitted and it's exactly what you need, then you will never feel comfortable in it. And that will come through. And ultimately, you won't succeed in what you're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say I can relate so much to the coaching that doesn't feel, it doesn't resonate in the process of, I'm in that right now and fighting it the whole way. The conversations that I'm having are, the transitions I'm making. But it's actually what I'm taking away from it is the fact that I did make the investment in myself, which is huge. Not necessarily that you want to, purchase the house on the street you don't want to live in just to purchase a house. However, there's more than I'm getting out of that, but it's an awareness. What I'm getting from that is an incredible awareness of who I am and my ability to trust myself, even as I follow or buck against a program, right? And it can work for 99 people out of 100, but if I'm that 100th and I put on the wrong clothing, it's a challenge. So I want to talk about Encore a little bit. I want to talk about, I'm the mother of 2 young daughters, and I have a third as well, daughter of my husband. And there's nothing I want more than to share my wisdom with them. Now, granted, I'm still in the process of finding that for myself, but at the same time, I'm thinking, how can I keep them from making the same mistakes that I have? And there's this huge desire. But I also, now that I'm approaching 50 myself, I understand too that there's a journey that I've had to go on, and that journey is useful in every moment. But when you're looking at either the hero's journey or the heroine's journey in our case, or even how they lay out chakra development, it's every 7 years you develop up the chakral chain of desires and needs and etc. Why is the midlife crisis such a thing?
Well, I happen to think that it's a gift. So to me, it's, you have done all those things. Let's look at it through the chakral ascension, right? So every 7 years you hit 49, 50, 51 is around when all that happens. So it's time. You've done development on each of those stages, and you've had to do, think about what you have to do. In the beginning, you're learning just how to live your life, how to, eat with a spoon and fork, how to play, how to tie your shoes, how to interact with other people, how to date, how to buck against your parents when you hit puberty, because you're getting ready to blossom into adulthood, all of those things. And then as women, we're the caretakers, and we're taught, and especially depending on the generation that you grew up in, right? It's ever changing, but we're taught to be the caregivers. We're taught to do everything for everyone. And, we take great pride in that. I love taking care of my family. I want everything to be great for them. But I also don't want to forget about myself. And I think we all find ourselves at one time or another in the point where we realize that we've given too much of ourselves. We've we haven't filled our cup back up. And to me, when you hit midlife and it is this big jolt, it's a reset. It's time to hit the reset button. And people get there's different reactions to it for sure. Some people feel like the best of life is behind them and they enter into a depression, and that's a very real thing. But here's the thing. Whether you look at it as a reset button and an opportunity, or whether it takes you a year or two to get to that point, you're not going to be able to get out of your feelings, your confusion, or anything unless you go inside. And you're going to keep spiraling around doing that if you don't go inside first.
And for me, midlife is, I didn't even realize that's what it was. Like, my doctor had to tell me. Like, I was so, focused on what I was doing that, and age has never been a big issue for me. Like, I always feel like for me, age, your biological age does not necessarily match your chronological age, because it's about how you feel, how you think. And so I've thought of myself as ageless for a while before I hit midlife. I just, even when it seemed like when I was younger, I actually felt older. Like, I was always one of those very mature, my, mental state was always years beyond my peers. And then I hit a certain point, I think it almost kind of reversed. It's like my mental age for me, it's whatever suits me at the time. Like, what, how do I need to think about things? And I had my son, I'm 51 now, and my son is 19. So I had him a little bit later than a lot of women do. So, you could think of it as like, instead of feeling like a grandma mom, I'm, we joke and he says, I'm the best mom ever, because not that I'm trying to be hip and cool, but my wisdom and my experience allow me to have a different perspective in raising him and in how we did things. And I was aware of that, generational training that we get, on roles, what's your role? And I never really subscribed to that too much. Of course, I know it's a natural instinct. Motherhood is it's a natural thing. It's how we're wired. And so we have that natural capacity to care, and take care of. And of course, he was my, number one priority. And when I hit midlife, I'm not an empty nester yet. It's going to be a little bit longer, but at the same time, he's self-sufficient, and he does his thing, and I'm free to do my thing. And I think that's where it comes in. It's that, plus there's of course physical changes, hormonal changes, and that's where my doctor came in. I'm like, what is going on? Like, I can't sleep, and why do I keep like feeling hot all of a sudden? Like, I didn't even know. I've never even been into a midlife group. I didn't even know what was happening till this was right before I met Carmen. And she says, well, you're premenopausal. This was a couple of years ago. Like, what does that mean? So she had to explain it to me. I'm like, oh. But I kind of just took it in stride. So the physical part didn't bother me, but I did get to this point of all of a sudden, I felt I had always knew exactly what I was doing, where I was going. I had my vision. I knew what I was working toward. And I felt lost all of a sudden. It was like someone pushed me out into the middle of the ocean in a boat without an oar. And I'm like, I don't even know, where's my compass? Like, I've always been so directed. Now I feel like I'm just sort of floating out there. And I didn't know how to work my way through that. I didn't know what that meant. And I wasn't depressed about it, but it was a feeling of helplessness and just a feeling of being lost. And I'd never experienced that before in my entire life. And so once I figured out something, that this was not temporary, like it didn't, we can all feel lost for a day, and I was okay with that. But, to feel lost, like weeks and months, and I'm like, okay, I gotta fix this. So then that's when I began doing the inner work. That's where I figured out that, yeah, things were shifting for me. My perspective was changing. And that's what put me on to the path that I'm on now. And I think for women, that's that crossroads. When you get there, you have to decide, okay, am I going to make the most of this? Or am I going to just sit out there in the sea and just drift around for an untold period of time? And there is a way to, get control of the boat again.
Yeah, it's interesting. Our uses of metaphor are so powerful, and yet sometimes we can feel so far removed from them, right? Because I can totally relate to that, being in the middle of the ocean, except that I live in a house, I have 2 beautiful children, I have a loving husband. I'm supposed to have all this figured out. I'm not in the middle of the ocean. It reminds me of the metaphor that we use for self-love. If you're in an airplane going down, you need to put your mask on first. The problem with that metaphor is that the way we look at life, we're not going down yet. We're not in that, oh shit moment of the plane's going to crash, at least not in our rational mind, because look, the sun is shining, we can make sense of this over here. And yet there's something that's very internal within us, where if we're not addressing it, we are adrift in the middle of the ocean without an oar. And not only that, there are shark fins. The plane is going down. So your comment on being out there in the middle of the ocean is a very emotional one for me, because I can relate so heavily. We are quickly running out of time. And of course, we could go down that rabbit hole for another hour. But in order to close and bring back my composure here, I want to talk about your tagline: experience elevates everything. And I see on your website, it says Encore Empire helps women cash in on life experiences so they can create their empire. I realized that I read that when I introduced the 2 of you. And yet after our conversation, it still hits me right at my composure. So let's talk about experience in a holistic sense. As a woman, let's say I'm a woman and I'm coming to Encore Empire for help. Where does your experience meet mine? And how do I, as your client, come to a holistic understanding of myself and my business through your work? That's what we're going to close on.
Sure. Yeah. So it all starts with, we direct you back to your strength, your core strength. And we start with values. Deirdre mentioned it earlier. Values and validation and relationships are our 3 kind of guiding principles. So it starts with values, because a lot of times many people have never stopped to think, what are your values? And the values can be your guiding lights, through your journey. So what we do is we look at the values, we look at the experience, we have a thorough intake process where we meet and we discuss everything about the people who we're working with, and we find out what their strengths are, what lights them up, and where their struggles are. And then we help guide them through their values. We help teach them how to validate them. Are you living in alignment with those values? Let's validate that. What lights you up? Are you doing what lights you up? And if not, let's shift things just a little bit. Usually it doesn't take a ton of altering. It's not some big 180-degree change. It's usually just very small shifts that are needed. And it's kind of just like tuning their compass, right? So we let them, when we say we help women over 40 cash in on life experience, it's honoring where you've come from. It's honoring the life that you've had. It's honoring the fact that you maybe were committed to your kids for so many years, and now you're doing something else, and there's nothing wrong with you to shift that way. It's honoring the woman that sits in front of us, and then helping her honor herself and move forward in that kind of space.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I have to say, before you go into your part of that, Deirdre, Carmen, having you say that it's incremental, that sometimes it's just a little bit at a time is, I have to think that for the listeners, if not for them, for me, is really reassuring, because sometimes we think that we've got to do the 180 to turn the ship around. And of course we don't have an oar. So, when we're adrift and we have no sense of direction, much less the proper means of propulsion, how do we do that? So thank you for that reminder, because I think it's a beautiful one, that the incremental and the small steps really do matter.
Definitely. Yeah.
And how we came up with the name Encore Empire, the way we looked at this is, what is an encore? Encore is taking the best of the performance, and we're taking the very best, the thing that people love the most, and we're bringing that back, and we're doing that small piece of it at the very end. And that's how we look at your life. You're taking all your experience and everything you've learned, everything you've done, the good, the bad, the ugly, and we're pulling out the very best pieces of that. And that's what you're going to use for the next part of your life. And that's where the experience comes in. And it's empire. And a lot of people think, oh, that's such a, big term. And, I don't want to be rich. I just want to help people. But that's not what empire really means. What empire is it is a something that it's your space, it's your where you live or your business. It's something that you have control of, that's yours. And the idea here is that your life is your empire. Your business is part of your empire. It's yours. It's in your control. And when we get to this point in midlife, that's why we work with typically, women over 40, because you kind of have to have this perspective of legacy comes into the conversation, where we are wanting to then, we're not surviving anymore. We're not getting through sleepless nights with the baby crying anymore. We're not chasing toddlers around anymore. Like, now is the time where we put in all that hard work. Now we have, our family is grown up, our relationships have matured. And now we can look at, let's take all that and let's make it the best. Let's really elevate all of it because of the experience that we had. And so that's how we came up with the name Encore Empire. And I had a thought. And what was the original question, Michelle? Sort of got off on a little tangent there.
That's okay. We were talking about elevate experience. Experience elevates everything. So it really is cashing in on life experience. And I love the play on words.
Yeah. And so that's the piece. It's the cashing in. We say that because that kind of gets the message. And people have this, they don't want to have the money conversation. And so, and they think, okay, well, I'm here to serve and build my, I want to help others and impact the world. But the bottom line is, your impact is limited by the income that your business makes. You have to have the tools. Money is a tool. That's all it's not the goal, and it's not the thing to pursue. It's the thing you need in order to bring about what you want and to get that transformation and to build the company that is the vehicle. Like Carmen talked about, it's the car. You can't get where you're going in life if you don't have a vehicle to take you there. And that's why we feel so strongly about building a business, because it's something that can take you where you want to go in the time that you want it to take you there. And no one, if you're riding the bus, by working for somebody else, you're on their schedule. And you're only going to go where they're going to stop. But when you have your own car, you can go wherever you want. You can go cross country. You can go to the town next door. It's all up to you, and you can change where you want to go with it at any time. And so that's what we help. And we see this a lot, not just in women starting their business, but business owners that maybe for the past few years have been struggling through because they didn't use the process that we use, this values and validation. They didn't understand that piece of it. And so they're working really, really hard, pushing the boulder up the hill.
Mhm.
And, they're determined and they're motivated and they're still standing, but they're not going anywhere really fast. And we know that when you put things in the right order and when you make those shifts, like we talked about, the tweaks, it's not that you have to, everybody it thinks it's an all or nothing. You got to scrap it and start all over again, or let's just build a whole new thing. That's not honoring your experience. You need to take what you've built. You've put in so much time and energy into what you already have. Let's just take that and build upon it and shift our perspective a little bit, change it a little bit so that it then becomes the thing that you always dreamed of.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love that from someone who has to talk about money. As a CPA, you really bring it home, because I think as women too, we have had those difficult experiences, and we have these unhealthy relationships with words, and yet your focus on the root of empire is really empirical, which is everything that is within my realm of purview.
Yeah.
And it is a holistic term, or it's not, like anything else, like money being a tool. Money is energy. It can be used in this way and used in that way. So I think really embracing those mindset shifts for ourselves and saying, everything else be damned, if you will. It doesn't matter what Fred thinks about money, or what he thinks about, or what Jamie thinks about money. And it might be right for her, might be wrong, but I'm okay entering into this because my values are aligned with a reality that is empirical, experiential, and it's time to cash in. The opportunity is now. We've gone through the chakral ascension. Carmen and Deirdre are here to help. I loved having this conversation. I have a little bit of envy of the two of you and the way you work together. It's a beautiful thing. And I really want to encourage the listeners to search Encore Empire. I have the social links right here, encoreempire.com. Of course, facebook.com/Encore Empire. On Instagram, it's encore.empire.official. And LinkedIn, they actually have a company page, Encore-Empire, which you can just search. If you'd like to reach out to Carmen and Deirdre, you can email them at hello@encoreempire.com. Did I miss anything?
Nope, I think that's great. Thank you so much for having us on. The conversation was fantastic, and you were excellent at leading us just down the perfect path, I believe.
And it is so refreshing, Michelle, to be able to, to fully talk in this vein of entrepreneurship. A lot of times that we have to talk the business basics. We do a lot of teaching and training. We have a free group on Facebook that we are there to serve and help. And this one last thought on the money piece, and we do that for free. That's our give back. And anyone can do that in their business. You can always have that piece where you're just simply reaching out, but then on the other side is the other part of the business has to make the money, because if it doesn't make the money in a way that allows you the time to do all the help that you do, and to be able to give back, then it isn't going to work out very well. And that's the piece we help with, is to help you feel good about making the money that's necessary for you to impact the world in the way that you want.
And we need it so desperately. And so I want to encourage all of my listeners to check out Encore Empire, get to know Carmen and Deirdre. They are truly, I met them also through a similar event, and I have seen nothing but generosity on their part. And because of the nature of our respective businesses, we don't interact a huge ton, but every time I've been in the group, it's just so open. It's a gorgeous showing of generosity, which will inspire you in your business, in your entrepreneurial journey. And Carmen and Deirdre, thank you so much again for sojourning with me today.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you.
Awesome. This has been another episode of Old Soul Sojourn with Encore Empire. My name is Michelle Janae, and until next time, dare to dig deep.